Good morning, everyone. This is 10 a.m, hopefully, and we're going to have another Brainstorm Cafe webinar. This one is on cybersecurity. Now, just by coincidence, it's Cybersecurity Week. So the timing was this, even though we planned it several weeks ago, we didn't know it was Cybersecurity Week. So it's very, very important and very relevant. So thanks all for joining this Cafe webinar. Now, the Brainstorm Cafe was set up last year to help businesses that had been locked down, as most of us were, and were getting smashed and beaten up by the lockdowns. Now, this is still the case for many businesses throughout New Zealand, and in particular in Auckland. So for those in Auckland who are getting this webinar, we hear you, we feel you. Some of you are doing okay, but many of you are getting into pretty rough waters. So at least we want to talk about something that you can do to protect your business with a threat other than COVID-19. Now, financially, the Brainstorm Cafe is supported by E3 Business Accountants. So a good big shout out to E3 for reaching out to small businesses throughout the country. Now, for this event, we've also been joined by SRN Partners. Now, they are chartered accountants who have offices in Auckland, Rotorua, Hamilton, Tauranga, and Mount Maunganui. So welcome aboard, and I hope you and your clients get a lot out of today's webinar. So thanks for joining us. Now, in our promotion for this webinar, we likened it to cybercrime to COVID-19 because it was invisible and it attacked everyone. Well, to protect us from COVID, as you know, you go and get your arm jabbed twice, and hopefully if you do catch it, that will get you through. But with cybercrime, there is no single jab. And unfortunately, with cybercrime, you really are on your own. But there is no jab to protect you. But we do have something that's almost as good, and that's our guest today, Kyle Gregg. So Kyle Gregg is from Optimus. Thank you, Kyle, for joining us today. He's going to share some horror stories about what's happened to, for instance, Kiwi Keith. Now, he's a made-up name, but the story is real, and it really did happen. And Kyle will go through that with you just to show you how vulnerable we all are. Now, just for those who think that cybercrime doesn't really attract the interest of cyber criminals into small businesses, I'm going to read you out a couple of stats here. 54% of small businesses think they are too small for a cyber attack, and yet in the last survey, there was a 424% increase, 424% increase in new small business cyber attacks last year. That's a huge increase. So small businesses are under attack by cyber criminals. And as we know, when you get attacked by a cyber criminal, not a lot you can do about it. You can go and complain about to the police and so on, but often these criminals are in foreign countries, and once your money is gone or your identity is gone, that's it. You are very exposed. So no more from me. I'm now going to hand over to Kyle. He'll give you a little bit of background about his knowledge and expertise, and we can go from there. So welcome, Kyle, and hope the audience of small business owners today gets a lot out of what you're offering.
Thank you, Jamie, and hello everybody, and thanks for the introduction and for having me here today. I look forward to sharing a true story of how a one-man band New Zealand business lost $100,000 after clicking a link in an email. However, before I get started, I'd like to share a little bit about myself first. I've worked in the IT industry for over 20 years and have focused on providing IT services to SME businesses around New Zealand. I've helped organisations throughout the technology lifecycle, including the design and implementation and upgrades, as well as moving organisations into the cloud or back again, and a whole variety of technical support issues along the way. During this time, I've seen many types of cyber attacks on businesses of all sizes. These attacks range from hackers breaking into email accounts and sending spam, to a small team of 5 having to pay a $50,000 ransom to get their data back, to larger companies who are forced to pay considerably higher sums. In early 2020, I joined the team at Optimus Systems as a business development manager. My role is to engage with new business opportunities and deliver modern and compliant IT solutions with outstanding performance, excellent service and support. Now I'd like to share the story of a recent incident where a local one-man band business became the victim of a very basic hacking technique and lost $100,000. I chose to share this specific incident as many organizations I speak with believe they are too small to be affected by cybercrime. Also, the victim could have easily prevented this by implementing very basic security measures that are often overlooked. So this is what happened. Keith is a solo operator providing vehicle rental services in Auckland. One day, Jamie, I'm getting a few people coming through the chat saying they can't see me. Are you having that problem as well?
Yes, I can see a couple of people put that through on the chat. We'll just check that. And it's very pixelated. And Joel says he can see you, and Sonia says it's pixelated. Sonia can't see you, and Leon can't see you either.
Can I do something? Just give me 1 moment. One minute.
Let's give you a minute to sort that out, please. While that's been sorted out, now you've frozen. While that's been sorted out, I'm going to hold up an email that I got just to show how vulnerable we are from Netflix. And this came through on Sunday. And it said to me, hi. It didn't have my name. It said, hi, we're having some trouble with your current billing information. We'll try again. But in the meantime, you may want to update your payment details, your account information. Said your sign-in email is such and such. Your offer expiration is Saturday, October the 16th, 2021, and your account is on hold. Please click the link below to restart your membership again. So here is I'm 1 click away from exposing my Netflix login details, which is also my email address, my password, and my credit card details. And I had a look where had this email come from, and it was from Netflix support, NETFILX SUPPORT. So all they've done is transpose part of the word Netflix to look very similar, and it was from @wwos.pl. Now, that could be Poland, or could be a cyber criminal sitting somewhere in Warsaw, and they decided that they would send out probably 1 million emails around the world looking for people who would be gullible enough. So I'm 1 click away from exposing so much in my business, so much in my personal life. Kyle, you seem to be back on deck again.
Thank you, and sorry about that.
That's all right. So you're going to tell us about Kiwi Keith. So just go back to that story, because it's a little bit like my Netflix one.
Very much so. I'll just step back to the beginning there. So Keith is a solo operator who provides vehicle rental services and is based in Auckland. One day he received an email with a link to access a shared file. Keith clicked the link, which took him to a website that looked very much like the Microsoft 365 login page. He entered his Microsoft 365 username and password to log in, and nothing happened. So he went about going about his day. What Keith didn't know is that he had just entered his username and password into a fake Microsoft 365 login page explicitly designed by a hacker to steal his passwords. And Jamie, one might assume that it's very similar to what may have happened if you had clicked the link to sign into Netflix.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, though, because Keith had entered his username and password into this fake page, the hacker now has access to Keith's emails. The hacker searched through Keith's emails and found his Vodafone account information, and they also found his internet banking ID. Using the Vodafone account information, the hacker performed a SIM card swap and stole Keith's mobile phone number. Using the internet banking ID and the same password as the Microsoft 365 account, the hacker set up a bank transfer of $100,000. As the hacker had stolen Keith's mobile number, they also received the bank's verification code by text message and approved the payment. Keith was devastated when he found out that $100,000 had been stolen from his bank account and was desperate to get it back. Keith contacted his bank to find out what they could do, and unfortunately, the bank could not reverse the payment. However, it did have a review process with the possibility of compensation. As Keith was missing many of the cybersecurity basics that could have prevented all of this, the bank declined to provide any compensation, and Keith is still $100,000 out of pocket. There are many scenarios that could lead to a hacker gaining access to emails, but in this particular case, several of the most basic measures that could have prevented this from happening were missing. Firstly, basic email security included with Microsoft 365 is limited to basic anti-spam protection only. Advanced mail security also includes malware, ransomware, phishing, and email spoofing protection. If Keith had used advanced email security, the link might have been identified as a malicious phishing URL and the message quarantined. If the advanced email security didn't detect the threat, then web content filters that automatically block malicious or high-risk websites such as gambling, adult content, or illegal downloads could have done the trick. If Keith had used a web content filter, the link to the fake Microsoft 365 login page might have been identified as malicious, with web filtering preventing him from visiting that page. Now, let's say the web filter didn't pick up the link and block it from working, then multi-factor authentication, or MFA, protects your online accounts from hackers by sending you a text message or using app codes on your mobile device to verify who you are. If Keith had used MFA on his Microsoft 365 account, the hacker may still have stolen the username and password, but would have been unable to access his accounts without the MFA codes from Keith's phone. Now, let's say multi-factor authentication wasn't enabled for some reason, maybe he had temporarily turned it off, then secure password management tools to protect passwords by making it easier to store unique and complex passwords without having to write them down would have helped. If Keith had used a secure password management tool with unique passwords for all accounts, the hacker would have been unable to access the internet banking ID with the same password that he had used for his Microsoft 365 account. Now, these are just some of the basic things that you can do to protect your organization from everyday cyber attacks. Jamie, back to you.
Can you just, MFA, multi-factor authentication, I'm sure a lot of the audience may not know what that is and how to implement it, because I'd only heard that only a few months ago. So maybe you could just step through what MFA actually is and how would you implement it?
So MFA is something that actually anybody who uses Xero may have noticed that Xero have recently enforced to all of their users that you need to receive a text message from Xero when you log in, and you need to type the code into the Xero website before you can log in. That is a very common type of multi-factor authentication. Other methods include having an app on your phone. Google have one called Authenticator. Microsoft were original and called theirs Authenticator too. But the idea is that you go into these apps and they have a token or a code that changes over every minute, and you need to type in the relevant code when you log in. And another way that a lot of you might have seen is, your bank back in the day might have sent you a keyring token that you use to log into your bank, which also rotates a code. And it basically is required in addition to your password, hence multi-factor authentication.
Okay, so it's just an extra couple of steps required to give that level of protection. Now, tell me about Microsoft 365, their backup. How important is it to have a backup beyond what 365 now offer?
Well, Microsoft actually implicitly state that they don't back your stuff up. It is up to you to make sure that you keep a copy of your important files in case you need to restore them. What they do have, however, is a retention policy. For example, if you delete an email and you even delete it from your permanently deleted items, it still hangs around for about 30 days, at which point it is deleted permanently. Now, this is great if you delete a file and you recall within 30 days, oh, where's that gone? You can recover it. However, after 30 days, it is gone forever. The industry statistics suggest that it takes up to 140 days on average for an organization to realize that they have deleted something and then go about trying to find it. And if you're relying on a 30-day retention policy, after 140 days, you're going to miss out. So backing up your Microsoft 365 accounts, same deal with Google, is also very important.
Okay. Now, a couple of things here. this webinar is being recorded, and we'll send a link out later on once it's finished, so you'll be able to see it again if you miss anything or you have to duck away early. Also, Kyle will answer any questions, so we'll have quite an extensive Q&A at the end of this webinar if it's necessary, and what Kyle doesn't get to answer today, he will do by follow-up email. So please be comfortable in putting into the chat area all the questions below. Just ask us anything, and they will get answered in due course. I'm going to now ask a question about free antivirus, because I've been asked that quite a few times from our clients. Free antivirus, it sounds good, but because it's free, does that indicate that maybe it's not so good after all? Can you tell us about what you know about free antivirus software?
I think free antivirus software definitely has its place, but I think for businesses, it is always recommended to use a subscription-based antivirus product. The reason for that is free antivirus programs are usually limited to on-demand scans, whereas a subscription antivirus program is running and scanning and detecting all the time. So rather than waiting till the next time you remember to run a scan to find a threat, a subscription one's checking in real time as you're using your computer all the time.
So does any antivirus software, does that stop spam emails like the Netflix one I got? Would that have been picked up, or is that purely for human intervention? I've got to be on my game. I see this as a bit sus because it doesn't even know my name. It has misspelt the keyword Netflix. So is it over to humans at the end of the day, or can you have layers and layers of security that will protect me from having a dumb moment?
Yeah, I think the layers of security is the approach that we would typically recommend. If we sort of have a look at some of the suggestions that were made around Keith, who lost his $100,000, the first layer of security that may have prevented this incident from occurring is advanced email security, which may have detected the message as it was coming through. Now, you mentioned, hey, do antivirus programs do that? Some of them do, and those products are probably more suited to an individual rather than a business. The business services, you're setting up a policy for a group of people rather than having to go around, 5, 10, 15 computers or more, and setting up, individual spam filters. So using an advanced mail security service as the first layer can protect your whole team. The next part was, if that message gets through the spam filter, what's the next layer that would pick it up? Using a web content filter, if you click a link, the link gets checked first before it allows your browser to visit. Now, if the page that has been set up to capture fake Netflix or Microsoft login information has been identified by the web content filter software, it'll block it, which means you can't visit the page. Now, let's say that maybe that's a brand new phishing page that's been set up and none of the security tools are aware that it exists yet. You're one of the first to receive it and it gets through, and you do click that link, then you might have multi-factor authentication. So in the event that you do share your password inadvertently and the hacker goes to use the password, it doesn't work without multi-factor authentication. And let's just say you don't have multi-factor authentication. If you have good password habits, you might have given away the password for your emails, but maybe in Keith's case, that same password wouldn't have worked for your bank account as well.
I've seen questions coming from Dave. How do you back up Microsoft Outlook?
If you're using a modern email service like Google or Microsoft 365, your Outlook is synchronized with your email account, which means if you lose the Outlook information on your computer, you can simply connect it Outlook using a new computer and all your information should still be there. In my opinion, that is the easiest way to make sure that you have a copy of all your stuff within Outlook. If you're using an email service such as, for example, Spark Business Mail, or maybe your email provider is the same company that hosts your website, then the backing that up can be a little bit more tricky. You would either need to get personal computer backup software, or you could go and take a copy of the data file that Outlook uses periodically and save it somewhere safe.
Right, thank you. So other than clicking on a link that arrives via email, how else does someone hack into your system? Do they hack in through your website? Do they hack in through your server? Talk us through how that happens.
So a hacker will look to exploit almost any vulnerability they can to gain access to your network. It could be your broadband router is running an old version of software. It could be maybe your wireless access point. Maybe it's a printer, a camera on your network, or even an unprotected, out-of-date computer or server. So there are so many, anything that connects to the internet is a vulnerability that needs to be managed. A method that stands out for me and something that I've seen being exploited maybe the most, other than emails, is people breaking in via remote desktop. So you may recall, you need to log into your server from home, or you need to log into your work computer from home. You open up Microsoft's remote desktop, and you punch in the IP address and hit connect, and boom, there's your work desktop on your home computer. If you're doing that without a VPN, then your remote desktop is exposed to these types of threats. And I've seen this configuration cost a business $50,000 because their entire server got cryptoed and a ransom demand was made. And what's more, the hackers also logged into the cloud and deleted all of their backups, which they thought would have saved them in this event.
Now, you mentioned working from home. Has remote access back into businesses by staff, employees and team members working remotely, has that opened up the opportunity for cyber criminals to attack a business because there's so many computers outside of the normal environment working from remote areas? Does that open up and make a business more vulnerable?
I mean, when, for example, lockdowns first started happening, we found that a lot of businesses were not prepared. Many organizations had laptops and their staff could simply take them home and continue to work because maybe they were cloud-based already. You might have some businesses were scooping up desktop computers and sending them home with staff. And then you'll have others where they maybe let staff use their personal computers at home. They basically rushed to get themselves set up for remote working. And it works. Staff can access all stuff. They can do what they need to do, but it doesn't mean that it was done securely. And any businesses who did rush to get something set up, and you're relying on that still, I'd encourage them to review what they've set up and make sure it's secure. Because it is possible that you may have inadvertently reduced your security to allow people to work from home.
Tell me about ransomware and what happens with ransomware. We hear stories about it that someone's hacked into your system, and if you pay money, you'll be able to get all your records and files back. That sounds very spooky. Can you talk through any incidents that you've experienced, or how ransomware works and the responsibility at this end, once you get the gun pointed at your head, so to speak, what you mean to do about it? Can you just talk us through some options there?
Yeah, so the most recent ransomware incident that I was involved in helping a client with, we were provided a referral in the first week of lockdown last year, back in March, and I got in contact with the IT provider who was looking after this business. There was only 5 staff using computers there. There was about 30 staff in total, but the rest of them were not office-based. So anyway, got in touch with the IT person, and he explained to me that the server has encrypted files on it and he's not sure what to do. So we had a look, and surely enough, all of the files were encrypted. We asked about backups. The server had software on it that was backing it up to the cloud, and the password for that software was saved in the web browser on the server. So the hacker got access to the server. They would have opened the browser and found the backup portal, and they logged in and deleted everything. We even contacted the backup provider to ask them if they had another copy of everything, and they said no. So, the only copy of the data on this particular server was encrypted. So, when you're looking at a server or a computer that has been encrypted, often the hacker will put a desktop wallpaper explaining what they've done and asking for some money, or they've put files like a text file in every folder on your computer explaining that your files are encrypted, and they'll give you what they call a Bitcoin wallet ID to transfer some money into. In this particular case, we needed to get 4 Bitcoin, which was around $50,000 at the time. And we were able to make the payment to the hacker, and they responded with a file that we could download and run it on the server, and it will decrypt all of the files that they have interfered with. And unfortunately, once this process had finished, we found there were some encrypted files on another computer. They asked for another Bitcoin, which was going to be around another $12,000, and we said no. The business owner decided that they didn't care enough about that particular machine. They got what they wanted off their server. They were happy to let that, that extra computer not worry about the data that was there. And we proceeded to wipe and replace their entire computer system, because not only did they have an insecure means of remote access, they were also still running Windows 7 and out-of-date software on their server. And they just hadn't invested correctly in keeping their systems up to date.
So you mentioned cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. If you do get held to ransom, obviously you don't pay by credit card because it's too easy to trace. Obviously you don't pay by direct debit or direct credit into someone else's bank account, because that's very traceable. So are all ransomware now, is that all done by cryptocurrencies? Is that been another opening for cyber criminals to say, you pay me, and when you pay me, no one will know where that money has come from or where it's going to? So has Bitcoin helped cyber criminals, or has cryptocurrency helped cyber criminals get paid?
Yeah, I think it has. It doesn't make it impossible to find where the money's going. We kept an eye on the Bitcoin wallet where we put this 4 Bitcoins into, and over the course of a couple of months, the balance in that wallet grew to around $2 million. And anybody who knows the wallet ID can look at how much is in there. As I understand it, what these people then do is that they'll just start splitting the money up and sending a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, and they might transfer it between different types of cryptocurrencies, and they basically launder that money to make it very difficult to identify where it came from. So by the time it lands in its destination, nobody's been able to track it. Now, also, as I understand it, certain law enforcement agencies around the world have become very capable at tracking where these funds are going, and they are making it increasingly difficult, even with cryptocurrency, for hackers to hide. And there have been some quite sort of high-profile busts of what they call ransomware gangs being caught and shut down, which is great.
Right, now I'm just going to backpedal a wee bit, because several months back I responded to Optimus and what Kyle was offering as an independent assessment of the security of our own system. And that's how I became involved in talking to Kyle and understanding that a lot of our clients out there probably had gaps all over their IT system. And I said to Kyle, at the end of this webinar, it would be great if we could put online a checklist so that the audience today could go away and cross-check and answer some questions, just see how their own IT stood up against security threats. And Optimus came back with a better idea, was that to have an online checklist, and we're going to put up the link shortly that you can click on that link and do a self-assessment. You put in your name, you answer some questions, and it'll be an auto-assessment done with the help of Optimus, just to let you know if you've got some gaps, if you've got some blind spots in your own IT system. So thank you very much, Optimus, for making that. Apparently it only just takes 2 minutes asking a few questions of you. So that link is going to come up now. We'll also send it in a follow-up email if you have to leave the webinar now and you don't get to do the link. So thanks again, Carl, for making that available. So what should you do to impress upon your staff? Obviously, the business owner is hypersensitive. They protect their bank account, they protect their credit cards, but then you've got 3, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 people on your system out there. Now, I know that in employment agreements, you have a bit of a security clause in there saying that everything here has to follow procedures. However, human error comes into it over and over and over again. What are the types of things you should impress on your staff, your employees, and your team members over and over to say, these are the things we have to look out for. This is the human gap in our security system. What are some of the things that you need to reinforce to your staff so that the human error is minimized?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that a business can do to maybe enforce compliance with IT policies. For example, multi-factor authentication with Microsoft 365. You can turn it on and off per user. Now, as an organization, you could decide that everybody must use this, and you can turn a policy on and enforce that everybody has to have it enabled. You can't turn it off, and everybody is protected by that. Another thing, for example, might be is you could deploy settings to people's computers which make their laptops automatically lock if they walk away from them for 5 minutes or more. So you don't have unattended computers which may have your customers' files or things like that open on them. The other side of this is potentially security awareness training, which involves testing your staff through simulated hacking attempts and finding out, for example, you might send them an email similar to that Netflix one, or maybe tricking somebody into clicking a link to log into a Microsoft 365 account. Now, these simulations are harmless, but what they do identify is which members of your team are maybe not able to pick up on the various things that might indicate that a message is malicious. And then it will offer them training so they can learn what they may have missed and then retest them at a later stage to see if they benefited from that training. So, like I say, setting up your IT system to maybe restrict some of the activities that are not acceptable to the organization, as well as providing security training to your team.
Now, tell me something about privacy. If you think your database of clients or contacts has been breached, what are your legal obligations if you suspect that there has been a leak or a breach and that information you have about other people may be out there? What are your obligations under that?
Well, some organizations have gone about implementing incident response policies, which I would encourage them to follow before checking in on my advice, but always make sure that your policy is compliant with the law. But generally speaking, I think, any access to affected resources should be restricted as quickly as possible as to contain the scope of the information that has been leaked. If personally identifiable information is included in the breach, you're obligated to notify the Privacy Commissioner. And you may also find that you're obligated to contact your cyber liability insurance provider if you have one, as they will have requirements around how to remediate the issue that you must adhere to, otherwise they could decline your claim. And also, following a good communications plan to make sure that everybody who is affected or involved knows what they're doing, and obviously get to work on resolving the problem as quickly as you can.
Right.
As it is a crime, you should also be reporting it to the police.
Right. Now, we're just about running out of time, but we've got a question from Wendy, which I'll read from the screen. My Microsoft Outlook on my laptop seems to work and seems spam to junk mail, but not on my Samsung Galaxy Tab A. How do I block spam email on the tablet? Did you get that question, or shall I read it again?
No, I can see that on my screen. Thank you, Wendy.
Right.
So Microsoft Outlook does have a very basic spam filter built into it, and it's capable of putting messages into your junk mail. And I believe that what will be happening is your Samsung Galaxy tablet doesn't have the same filtering capabilities. So, yeah. If you'd like to, it doesn't sound like as well, for example, that maybe you're using a Gmail or Microsoft-like service for your emails, because, you know, if you were, for example, you know, changes that happen on Microsoft Outlook would get synchronized to your Galaxy phone. So there's a few ways to solve that, and if you want to send us a follow-up question via email, I'd happily share my thoughts on that with you.
Oh, thank you. Well, look, we've just run over 30 minutes, which was the planned time for this. Thank you everyone for joining us. Excuse me. A couple of things. We're still happy to answer questions that you might send through later via email. Kyle's offered to answer those over the next day or so. Do click on the link to just do yourself a test on your own cybersecurity blind spots. And there will be a recording sent out later today to everybody who's registered for this email, so you can have a second bite of the cherry, so to speak. Kyle, thank you very much today. And a brief apology to everyone that the pixelated image coming from Kyle wasn't what we would like. However, the sound of what he was saying is probably more important than what he looks like. So hopefully for everyone today, you got something from that. Cybersecurity is as dangerous or more dangerous than probably COVID-19 in lots of ways. Just one of the challenges that we're all facing at the moment in business. Thank you again, Kyle, and we'll sign off, and thank you to the audience for being with us today.